number two on the third race. Oh, wrong place. Yeah, we are on. All right, bless the Lord. Here we are with the Enoch study as we continue, and we still have about 100 pages to go, but we're getting there. So if you figure we could cover close to 10 a week, that's 10 more weeks. And so it's getting there. Now, I need to give this disclaimer today. Of all the chapters in Enoch to read, this is the one I don't like the most. It is boring. You have no idea what the guy is talking about to read. So we have to glean little tidbits out of it as we go along. He's talking about the luminaries and the gates and the courses and all this of the sun and the moon and the universe and the stars. It's like, what is he talking about? So all I can say is Enoch is writing what he saw. It was not explained by the Lord. He was not explained by an angel. He's writing what he saw. And so you have to understand that we have, Enoch has given this to us in the perspective of a human being. So it's not a thus saith the Lord or an angel that would know better. So it sounds like, the sun revolves and all this kind of stuff. But really, it's from Enoch's perspective. And it's going to be talking about courses and gates and all this kind of stuff. And that's difficult to know too. So as we move along in this stuff, there's certain astronomical things we need to understand about the season and the planet and all that kind of stuff. The Earth axis from the rotating axis, like a ball, is 24 degrees off. And so our planet tilts off the axis 24 degrees. But it doesn't change. So if the Earth is tilted like this and the sun's over here, as it goes around the sun over here, now the top axis is away from the sun. As it comes back over here, now the top axis is toward the sun. That gives us our seasons. The Earth itself does not change axis. So it's important to understand these kind of concepts and trying to figure out what Enoch's talking about. However, I always love these howevers, there is a 2 to 3 degree change even in the seasons. So when the Earth axis is like this, there's a 2 to 3 degree change in this axis as it goes around. So in other words, 2 to 3 degrees really almost gives us our seasons. So you stop and think about that 2 to 3 degree change of all the universe, of all the planets that are in the universe. How does a 2 to 3 degree change on the Earth determine whether life exists on this planet or not? And that's what it amounts to. 2 to 3 degree change. And these scientists, as we call them, cosmologists or cosmologists, study of the cosmos, not doing hair, but study of the cosmos. They also tell you that if the Earth was 1% different from its distance from the sun, no life would exist on this planet. So if we're 93 million miles from the sun, you take 1% of that and we move closer to the sun, we're dead. We all bake. If you take 1% of it and move it away from the sun, we all freeze to death. There is this tiny, tiny little window that God created all things for this earth, for life to exist on this earth. So when people talk about, it was all by chance. This all happened by chance, that there's life on this earth. It just happened. When you say, well, it's impossible for it to happen, but it happened. Well, yeah, because God did it. Well, no, we want to believe that. It happened. Somehow or another, the chemicals came together and formed life. Yet they cannot create life in a lab with the same kind of amino acids or anything like they say. They cannot create life. So the whole idea that this life began on this planet by circumstance is astronomically insane. It really is. It's insane. Life did not happen on this earth by circumstance. And so the tiny percentages in the universe of what our sun has to be, what the earth has to be, we had to have the perfect star. So the sun was the perfect star. There's a lot of stars out there in the universe that cannot hold life of any sort, even if all the circumstances were perfect, because the elliptical orbits, or the explosion, the fire, sun explosions, sunspots, and everything else that occur on a sun would destroy immediately. Some of those sunspots they see in the universe throws out these X-rays, gamma rays, and everything else, millions of miles, would fry any kind of life on a planet. But these scientists are going, but it happened. No, God created it to be happen. Oh, we don't want to believe in God. And this is the typical of evolutionary scientists. They go, so, well, we have to believe it happened because the alternative is not acceptable. In other words, we won't believe in God, we refuse to believe in God, so we have to figure out what made it happen. Well, that's outright foolishness. Outright foolishness. When Job himself said God formed the sun and the planets and hung the earth upon nothing. This is Job in the Bible, hung the earth upon nothing. How did Job know that? Job didn't have a Hubble telescope. He didn't have a satellite. He didn't have a spaceship. He didn't have any of those things. But he knew that God took this world and hung it out there on nothing. That's one of the scriptures that Christopher Columbus used to know that the world was round. He knew it was round. But Job stated that. Job was one of the oldest books in the Bible. And so, how did he know that? Because God revealed it to him. It wasn't a thought of a man, or a man came up with something. Job was told that God hung the world upon nothing. And you stop and think about that. How in the world do the planets evolve around the sun? The sun has a very strong gravity pull. How do, thousands of years go by and none of the planets change their orbit or get any closer to the sun? Normal physics tells you that if you got a magnetic force pulling this way, eventually it's going to pull in the body. That's just the way physics is. Eventually going to pull it in. But God has set everything in motion, and by his word, he said, Earth, you're going to stay 93 million miles away from the sun. And all the other planets, you have your directive too. Then he puts angels over them, and those angels make sure nothing changes that. Because what if a bad angel come up and somehow or another broke that spiritual thread that's holding all that stuff and let the planets come crashing? So God has got powerful angels that make sure God's word is carried out, doing these things. But, there's a lot of good books that are written on this stuff. Even the elements on the earth were developed by exploding stars. Gold, silver, and iron, all our other elements were created by these exploding stars, quasars, and all this kind of stuff, created those elements. And God had those elements rain upon the earth, and that's how we have those elements today. You ever stop and think about it? You don't have layers of gold on the earth. It's a little here, little here, little here, little here. And some pockets have more than others. So there's a lot of things like that that God spoke into existence. And so Enoch is just trying to see and explain what he says. So when we see things like, and the sun set in the west, in his eyes as a human being, that's what he thought. So we have to go through it with those eyes wide open as we're looking at these things. So let's, hope you read the appendix beforehand, because we're going to start on chapter 151. Page 151. Chapter 72, verse 1. Before I start there, we want to talk about a scripture. Everybody turn to this if you got your Bibles. Isaiah 30, verse 26. Isaiah 30, verse 26. Sometimes these little nuggets of scripture we want to talk about, because at least it gets your brain cells a-moving a little bit. Because the Lord wants us to analyze and figure things out. It's like the scripture says, the Lord conceals a matter, but it's a matter of kings to search it out. Are you kings? You're kings and priests. So, based off that scripture, you are required to search it out and try to figure out what God is talking about. So that's very important that we search these things out. So Isaiah 30, verse 26, let's take a look at that real quick. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days, in the day the Lord binds up the breach of his people and heals the stroke of their wound. So based on what Isaiah is saying here, the sun is going to be 7 times brighter than it is now. And the moon will shine as bright as the sun. Is that really what he's talking about? Because life will be existing on the earth in the millennial reign, and that would destroy all life, just like I said earlier. 1% change, life is over on this planet. So what is Isaiah talking about? I don't know. Let's go to the next thing. No. Yeah. Quite often, the moon represents God's people, his people. And the sun represents the Messiah. So, think of the analogy. The moon gets its light from the sun. It's the same concept where Yeshua said, I am the light of the world, and basically because of me, you are the light of the world. So when the moon gets really bright, and we're talking about spiritually and symbolically speaking now probably, that we will shine like the luminaries. It's talking about us. But it's more than that. It is talking about when he returns, because it's at the point where he binds up the breach of his people, the affliction, the hurt, and the terror of his people through the tribulation. So when these lights, these luminaries begin to shine crazy, it's just before the Lord binds up the breach of his people. It is when he said, they say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, Israel does, and they call upon the name of the Lord. Then the Lord comes with his saints. So when that happens, when they look up and see the sign of the Son of Man, and they call on the Messiah, then he comes. So when he comes, as soon as Israel calls upon him, he is going to be shining brightly like the sun, and the saints are going to be shining brightly like the moon, because we reflect his light. I believe that's what Isaiah is talking about. I don't know if any other way it could be, because it would destroy everything on earth if the sun went 7 times brighter. There wouldn't be anything left on the earth that was of flesh. Verse 27, behold, the name of the Lord comes from afar. The name of the Lord is who? Yeshua. I say this a lot in service. Who is the name of the Lord? It's Yeshua, because this is who's coming from afar, the Messiah. burning with his anger. Remember what I said? Once he leaves the throne, he's coming as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, no more grace and mercy. And he's coming to destroy the sinners out of the earth. And the burden thereof is heavy, his lips are full of indignation, and his tongue as a devouring fire. Wow. So based off like 27, what 27 said, and you relate it to 26, it has to be a symbol about the sun and the moon, talking about the Messiah and the saints. That's what it's talking about. All right, so let's go to Enoch here. All right, verse 1. The book of courses of the luminaries of heaven. The relation of each according to their classes, their dominion and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is her guide, showed me. And he showed me all the laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world, unto eternity, until the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary of the sun has its rising in the eastern portals of the, where am I at here? Of the heaven. Midway to, okay, eastern portals of heaven, and a setting in the western portals of heaven. So here Enoch is saying the sun rises in the east, it sets in the west, and there's portals. What does it mean by portals? All right, so this is very difficult. You know, I mean, there are so many people out there that talk about portals. You know, there's portals in heaven. There are gates in heaven. There are ways to come and go and all this kind of stuff. This is not what this is talking about. This is talking about that the sun and the moon have their directions and what they are supposed to do. The portals could be the moon waxing and waning. The sun, its portals, is moving, going like here in the west, going from the northwest in the setting in the wintertime to the southwest in the setting. And then the same on its rising. So what appears to be the sun now setting here, then later on he's setting here, then he's setting here, then he's setting here. This is the portals that Enoch is talking about. That's what he's talking about. And the same with the rising, you know. When it's summertime and it's hot, it's rising over here. Later in the winter, it's rising over here. And I tried to find all over the internet to try to find out how much a degree change it happens per day. And the best information I could find out, it was in the hundredths of a degree per day it changes. Those basically are portals. So if you say it rises right there, that's a gate. The next day it rises right there, that's a gate. It rises right there, that's a gate. And it continues on, a portal gate. But doesn't mean it's some kind of gate to heaven. It just means that it's moving, or appears to be moving, when it really is the earth that is causing it to move. But Enoch probably didn't know that. All he knows was, yesterday the sun came up over there, today it's coming up over here. Because he didn't know all these things. That's what portals are in this particular story. Verse 3, and I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets. So, so according to Enoch, in a year's time, he saw the sun come up in 6 different places, and saw the sun set in 6 different places. But the best I could find, including the NASA website on the internet, is it changes every day. So it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going from the max to the minimum. It's a little bit every day, which perfectly makes sense if the world is tilted and it's going around the sun. You know, that portal is going to change every day as it goes around. So this is one of the difficult things, trying to figure out what Enoch is talking about and why, he was writing basically on his own brain here. Because if an angel was actually telling him, I mean, Uriel was probably showing him, but Enoch's trying to explain it, and I don't think he got it from the angel. I think he was explaining it with his own intelligence. The moon arises, sets in these portals, and the leader of the stars and those whom they lead. You stop and think about it, the moon follows the portals. You ever thought about that? When the moon if the sun comes up over here in the east, the moon will come up in the same place. And if the sun sets over here at this angle, the moon will set over here in this angle. What are the chances of that? Enoch is talking about the sun and the moon rising in the same portals. That tells you, that this is an awesome book. For little mistakes that Enoch makes, but it's an awesome book. Who would know that? Okay. And the leader of the stars and those whom they lead, 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all fall in each other accurately corresponding order. Also many windows to the right and left of these portals. All right, so when I talked about, a portal here, a portal here, a portal here, a portal here, that last statement of Enoch says, and many to the right and left of those portals. That basically is saying the same thing that Enoch is saying, tiny degree changes to the portals. Now, why was he trying to describe portals when he just comes out later on and says, and many windows between the portals? So I don't know what the difference is between a portal and a window. Unless, and this is really reaching out there, these are actual gateways to heaven also. These portals. And these windows are those small degree changes between the portals. I don't know. Interesting thought, though. All right. Verse 4. And at first there goes forth a great luminary, named the sun, and his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven. He is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. Yeah. Did they all know that back then? I don't know. A lot of people thought the sun was a god. The chariot in which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east. Now that's an interesting statement. It's the chariot in which he ascends. So when the sun comes up in the east, they're saying he's riding a chariot. It's a chariot that's dragging him across the sky. The wind drives and the sun goes down from the heavens and returns through the north in order to reach the east. So it's saying that the sun comes up here, it's going to cut across a little bit more of the northern sky in the summertime before it settles in the east. And so Enoch describes it as a chariot pulling it along. But then on the other hand, it says the wind drives. Now why did he say the wind drives? There's surely no wind up there. Why does he say that? Is it the Spirit of God? Quite often the word wind is ruach, the Spirit of God that sets these things in motion. Don't know. A lot of mysteries right here. And is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal that shines in the face of heaven. Verse 6, and this way he rises in the first month in the great portal. So there is a great portal. Anybody know what that great portal is? Huh?
The New Year.
No. Well, it is in a sense. What New Year? Nisan. You're right. That is the equinox. That is when the sun is the earth is completely perpendicular to the sun. That is the great portal. So as the earth is going around the sun, in the summertime, it starts with the equinox right there, and as it moves towards summer, it's going through these windows and portals more north. Then as we move back toward the fall, it reverses its course in that sense until you reach a fall equinox, and then it starts moving the other way for winter. So it goes back and forth like this, and the dead center is that equinox. So here Enoch calls it the great portal. So the equinox concept is the great portal. And that great portal quite often occurs right around Passover. That's when it happens, right around Passover. Now, how do they determine Easter? Anybody know how they determine Easter?
Does it have to do with the equinox?
Yes, it does. Easter is determined not by Passover, but Easter is determined to the closest Sunday of the equinox, which is always why it is around Passover. But the church determined many years ago, when they decided to go the Easter route instead of Passover route, that what is the spring equinox, which would be the great portal that Enoch talks about, and they say, okay, where's the closest Sunday? That's going to be Easter. That's how they determine what Easter is. They always wanted to be on a Sunday. But it's in a way a defiance of God's Hebrew calendar. God said the first in the sun is the first of the year. So the church comes along and determines that we're always going to have Easter on a Sunday because that's the day he rose. But if it's on a lunar calendar, that day is supposed to change. Based off of God's plan and the alignment of the sun, the planet, and the stars, basically. That's why it's supposed to be on the 14th in the sun. That's why you see Passover and Easter can sometimes be as much as a month off from one another. But most time it's within a week or two. The church uses the equinox, the closest Sunday to the equinox. The Hebrew calendar uses the seasons. That's what they use, the seasons. So, but they're very close. They're very close. All right, where was that great portal at? Where was that at? Just before 7. Right above 7. Ah, there it is, verse 6. Okay. You see so many portals in this thing, I lose my place, you know. Verse 7. And in that fourth portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings from which proceeds a flame when they're opened in their season. So it's saying here that in these portals comes all these windows. In this case, 12 of them. So one of the things I was looking at on the internet was hoping to see it mapped out. That I wanted to see these portals mapped out according to the Earth rotation to the sun by NASA, but all they did was show one map that showed about 20-degree portals like this, instead of showing how it gradually occurs. But you know it doesn't jump, so you know it's gradual. So, but I did not see a single map on the NASA website or any other website showing the gradual portals of the sun. All portals mean is where it comes up today. That's a portal. Where it comes up tomorrow, that's a portal. Where it comes up the next day, that's a portal. Well, I don't know. Apparently, there's more designated, the bigger portals are called portals, and I guess everything in between is called a window, I guess. I don't know. I would think it would be gradual, same percentage every day. But I don't know. I couldn't find a map on it. Yeah, Jim?
Are they different settings, like they go up to a certain point and they stop for a little bit?
Don't know. That's what I was trying to find out. So Jim's question was, are there different settings? If it's been really mapped out, can you see where it actually shows division of portals? And that's what I was hoping to find, but I could not find anything like that. to find the difference between portals and windows. And I was hoping to find it, and all I saw was the big portals, you know, like 20-degree jumps, 20-degree, you know, like this. Maybe those are the portals, and everything in between is windows. But why? What is the difference between a portal and a window if that's the case? Why would you say portal and not a window? Or why would you say window and not a portal? I don't know. Yeah. Alan, you have a question?
Could it be the beginning of a week, and the window would be the day?
I don't know. Beginning of a week, you know, that's a good possibility, Alan. Maybe the portal is the Sabbath. It falls on the Sabbath, that's a portal. Everything else is a window. Well, I didn't think of that. That could be. You know, maybe that was God's plan all along.
Now, these are talking about windows inside the portal as well as windows that separate the portal.
Yeah, windows inside and outside the portals. Yeah. But what defines a portal from a window? I'm not sure. Unless there is the Sabbath day defines a portal. The other 6 days are the windows. I don't know.
Windows, I think, would represent looking through prophetically. The portals would be actually going through.
The gates. So Jerry said the windows would be the represents prophetically, but the portals is actually going through, traveling through. Yeah, seeing through. Maybe. You know, there's a good chance that like when the fallen angels came and anytime other heavenly beings come from heaven, they're probably going through portals. But how does that work? How does that line up? When you look at the universe and you see all that, what creates a gate versus a window? The portals are really gates.
What does Rosh Chodesh do in there?
Rosh Chodesh is probably a portal.
Didn't they say it was 6 or something like that? Well,
Well, you know, they've talked about a lot of parts here, so we'll keep moving along. Maybe something will jump out at us. I read this through a couple times, and I just threw the book in the air. Went and got coffee. Man, Lord, I don't understand this. You got to show this stuff to me, you know. But I've done that before. On this particular chapter is like the most difficult for me to try to explain anything. Once we get through this chapter, then it becomes self-evident what the rest are talking about. But this one is a mystery to me, and it's always been a mystery. All right, where are we at? 8. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that fourth portal 30 mornings in succession. So it's almost like what Pastor Anita just said. Maybe a portal is Rosh Chodesh. Maybe it is. Then maybe that's why we have a Rosh Chodesh celebration. The Lord's Spirit is so strong here. It's a portal time. And the Lord looks down from heaven. We do know that there are certain periods of time that the heavenly hosts gather before the Lord in heaven. Maybe it's on those portals. Yeah, they all come before. This is how Eve got deceived in the garden. It was one of those times where the heavenly hosts had to gather before the Lord, and so the Garden of Eden failed to have its guards. So Satan came up that time and deceived Eve at that time. Yes, sir?
Saying the 30 mornings, I wonder if that could be a month, and the 12 windows are 12 months in a year.
12 months? Could be. Yeah. Because 30 days would be a month. It'd be a Rosh Chodesh. And so a window, maybe it is each month. Yeah. All we can do is speculate on this. 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of heaven. So the west, where it's set, is called the fourth portal.
How many months in the Hebrew calendar? There's not 12, is it?
There is 12 to 13.
That's what I thought. So that wouldn't work with that then.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Enoch is basing this on the Hebrew calendar itself rather than the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah. if Enoch knew what the Hebrew calendar was. The question was that, say it again, Jerry, so I can repeat it.
I asked the question of whether this was in the Hebrew calendar or the Gregorian calendar, and if it was the Hebrew calendar, it was 12 or 13 months.
Right.
And in the Gregorian calendar, it's 12 months, and therefore, it couldn't have been the Gregorian calendar that Enoch was
Right.
referring to.
So what Jerry was saying is, what calendar was Enoch using? And if it was the Hebraic calendar, it's 12 to 13 months. If it's a Gregorian calendar, it's 12 months, but then everything would be out of line.
That's right.
Because if these portals are every 30 days, then it doesn't work in the Gregorian calendar. But why does the reset come in there and create the next Hebrew month and put everything back on schedule again? Great mystery. Yes, sir.
The difference is solar calendar versus a lunar.
Right. But the solar calendar cannot work here because it's 30 days, for the portal, 30 days. And the solar panel doesn't work on a 30-day cycle. So, great mystery. I don't know. So, but it's fun to think about it, how God is doing this.
Plus, if it was a month, the sun would jerk, or it doesn't jerk.
Yeah, the sun doesn't jerk. Yeah. It's,
Want me to get the microphone for everybody? Because this seems to be a question and answer time.
yeah, let's get,
Listening, they can't hear it on my
yeah, let's get it, Brian, because this is kind of important discussion. This is the mystery here is worth having a discussion over how it all works.
And anybody that wants the mic, we'll just
Yeah.
go over here and you guys can come get it.
Yeah, so if you got a question, come up to the mic so we can get it recorded, because there's a lot of people watching online and they want to hear what the questions are.
Hello.
Because nobody knows this and understands it. So, as I like to use the word scripturelate, where you take scripture and speculate with it. Because if a matter of kings to search out a matter, it's good to have these type of discussions. Just set it right out there in the middle of the floor, Brian.
I'm going to, as soon as I get this up, to the way that it's at least the height.
There you go.
There we go.
So if you want to ask a question, please come to the mic, because there's a lot of people out there who want to hear this discussion. How does it work? How do the windows work? How do the portals work? You can see that it seems to have something to do with the Hebraic calendar and Rosh Chodesh being certain portals. So it's hard to say how it works. But the problem with the Hebrew calendar, it has to be adjusted. Every 3 years, you had to add another month. How does that work with portals and windows? God doesn't suddenly jump ahead with the earth to change something because of this happening. So, there's probably things we don't understand, that at one time, maybe all this stuff was very synchronized. But after Noah's flood, maybe it got out of synchronization. We don't know. There might have been a time where it all fit quite well with the Hebraic calendar. And then, after Adam and Eve sinned and the flood came and all that, it all changed. That's always a possibility too. And the truth be known, we may never know what Enoch's talking about here until we get to ask him personally. So, write your question down and keep it with you. And when you see Enoch, ask him, how did this all work? Do you have another question? Come to the mic, please.
I have a suggestion of how it might work.
All right, come to the mic. We all want to hear it. We're going to have a suggestion of how this all might come together and how it might work.
There's an eternal question as to whether a year is 360 days or whether it's 365.
That's correct.
When Enoch was looking at it, it was 12 times 30,
Right.
360 days.
Correct.
Something happened, the flood, whatever might have made an adjustment, so now we have 365 days in the year.
Yep.
So that would explain some differences
It could be. It could be when the Noah's flood came down and the water weight on the earth could have slowed it down. Except you're going to see here in a little bit that Enoch tells you a year is 364 days a year. So again, who knows? You know, we throw it up there. Okay, verse 9. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer and the night nightly shorter to the 13th morning. On that day, the day is longer than the night by a 9th part, and the day amounts exactly to 10 parts and the night to 8 parts. All that's talking about is the day is getting longer and the night's getting shorter. And the sun rises from that 4th portal and sets in the 4th and returns to the 5th portal of the east 30 mornings and rises from it and sets in the 5th portal. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts and amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. So if you understood what I just read, we need to talk. Verse 13, and it returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises and sets in the 6th portal, and 30 mornings on the account of its sign. 14, on that day the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night. All right, so you stop and think about that, that's true. Summertime, when you get to the maximum period of the day in the summer, June 21st, today's calendar, the daylight is double the night light. In the same way in the winter, the night is twice as long on December 21st as it is today. So Enoch's got it right. We just don't quite understand how it all works. Verse 14, on that day the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night. And the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. That's a total of 18 parts on the day. So are those 18 parts portals, or are they windows? Well, we could debate about this for a long time, whether they're windows or portals. 15, and the sun mounts up to make the day shorter and the night longer. The sun returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal and rises from it and set 30 mornings. So all you smart guys can sit down and analyze all this, read all the NASA websites about it, and maybe you'll come up with a good explanation. You can let NASA know how it actually works. Verse 16, and when 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases by exactly 1 part. So it reverses itself by 1 part. So what we read earlier is there's 18 parts. So how does that work, 18 parts? I don't know. Obviously, there's a whole lot more days from the equinox to the maximum than 18. It almost sounds like, you know, every 3 days it moves apart or something, or every 4 or 5 days it moves apart. I don't know. 16, and when the 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases by exactly 1 part, becomes 11 parts, and the night 7. And the sun goes down from that 6th portal in the west and goes to the east and rises in the 5th portal for 30 mornings and sets in the west again in the 5th western portal. All right, sounds like Greek to me. Okay. 18, on that day the day decreases by 2 parts and amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. So it almost sounds like depending on where you're at on the rotation around the sun, there's more parts at a certain time than there are other times. So if there's 18 parts and you started getting around the equinox, the parts probably really slow down, but as you move away from the equinox, the parts increase time-wise.
So like hours?
Well, parts would be degrees of change.
Certainly a mathematical problem here.
Yeah, it is a mathematical problem. But if you're horizontal to the sun, you know, if the world is right here, the sun's right here, as you come to an equinox, the change on a month on either side of the equinox will be far less than when it moves away from the equinox. And I think that's what Enoch is trying to tell us. How did he know this stuff? How could he figure this stuff out? This is very interesting.
I see it on video. We do the whole model.
We got a mic. You want to talk into it? Go to the mic. We want to. Right. Yeah. Yeah, go talk in the mic. People want to hear this.
I just said that I've seen that on a video. Somebody went and did a CGI of the whole thing, and it's absolutely stunning and beautiful and magnificent. And they actually show you exactly how it works.
Yeah. Well, that'd be nice to see that video. We'd probably get a better idea how it works. Yeah, that would be great. It's got to be something like that. So when you get to the equinox, the changes are really small once it goes past the equinox. Everybody knows what I mean by the equinox? All right. That is when the day and the night are exactly the same time apart. 12 hours and 12 hours. That's the equinox. There's two of them, spring and fall. So spring and fall equinox. As it starts to move away from the equinox, I believe the increments are slower. But as it moves toward the maximum in the summer and winter, the increment changes are bigger. This may be why all of a sudden you can have a really nice spring for a couple months. It's not bad at all. Then all of a sudden as you get toward the summertime, why is it getting hot so fast? Because the jumps could be bigger by the time it gets to the maximum. It may be something like that. So interesting. You could really wow the NASA scientists if you can figure this all out. They may already know. They're just not telling you to. You never know. All right. Where am I at? 18? And on that day, the day decreases by 2 parts and amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. Again, when it says parts, it's actually the hours of a day, the hours of a night right here. How fast the day changes from the night. That's what it's talking about. So basically, just shortly after the equinox, the change is small. But as it moves away from the equinox, the change gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what I believe it's talking about also. All right. 17, in the earth, sun goes forth from that 6th portal in the west and goes to the east and rises in the 5th portal for 30 mornings and sets again in the west in the 5th western portal. On that day, the day decreases by 2 parts and amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun, again, we're talking about 18 parts. And the sun goes forth from that 5th portal and sets in the 5th portal of the west and rises in the 4th portal for 1 and 30 mornings on the account of its sign, and sets in the west. So you got 31 mornings right here. Interesting. It's probably why the scientists eventually figured out they had to have 31 days in a month, at certain months. 20, and on that day, the night is equalized with the night. It becomes of equal length. And the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day 9 parts. We just talked about that. And the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west and returns to the east and rises 30 mornings in the 3rd portal and sets in the west in the 3rd portal. Right. And on that day, the night becomes longer than the day, and the night becomes longer than the night, and the day shorter than day till the 30th morning. And the night amounts to exactly 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. There's your 18 again. And the sun rises from the third portal and sets in the third portal in the west, returns to the east, and for 30 morning rises in the second portal in the east, and in like manner sets in the second portal in the west of heaven. So I could be wrong here, but one of the things that I'm seeing here is when it's just off the equinox, the portal is more like 31. But as you move toward the longest day and longest night, it goes back to 30 again. So in that sense, if that's true, then the Gregorian calendar has the wrong months determined for 31 days. August being 31 days, but according to this, it looks like the maybe April should have been 31 days, and October is 31 days. Those kind of things. So, but I'm sure the Gregorian calendar, all they were trying to do was balance it out. They probably weren't worried about what month the determined gets the bigger day. But according to Enoch here, you could probably figure out exactly what day should have been the longer day or longer month. Wow. Verse 24, and on that day the night amounts to 11 parts and the day to 7 parts. 25, and the sun rises on that day from that second portal and sets in the west in the second portal and returns to the east in the first portal for 1 and 30 mornings. So you got another 31 day month here. So does it match what the Gregorian calendar has for 31 days? Probably not. July has 31, August has 31, but it ain't according to this. So they created some months with 31 days to make up the difference. But if they would have followed the book of Enoch, they could have actually picked the very day it's supposed to have 31 days. Amazing. Really is amazing. That's why following the Hebraic calendar could be very important to understand the plan of God. But it's difficult. 25, and the sun rises on that day from the second portal and sets in the west in the second portal, returns to east in the first portal for 1 and 30 mornings, and sets in the first portal in the west of heaven. 26, and on that day the night becomes longer and amounts to double of the day. This is dead on winter. And the night amounts to exactly 12 parts and the day to 6. There should be an exception right here. Except if you live in Alaska. It's funny, but it does bring a point up. This is assuming you are speaking from a particular location on the earth. Probably Israel. It's from the Israel perspective. Because if you're in Alaska, it is not the same. Because Alaska winter times, you may have 1 hour of daylight. So it's certainly different as you go up the latitudes. So there has to be a reference point, and it probably has to do with Israel because Jerusalem is known as the center of the earth. It would make sense that that is the reference point, is Jerusalem. Interesting, huh? Verse 27, and the sun has therewith traversed the divisions of his orbit and turns again on the divisions of his orbit and enters into the portal 30 mornings and sets also in the west opposite. And on that night has the night decreased in length by a 9th part, and the night has become 11 parts, and the day 7 parts. And the sun has returned and entered into the second portal in the east. It returns on those his divisions of his orbit for 30 mornings, rising and setting. This would truly be fascinating if somebody can actually plot this out. It would be very interesting if you could plot it out. Did they? I got to see the video. That's good. I didn't realize somebody had done that, so I couldn't find it while I was searching, so you got to send it to me. I'd like to see it. Verse. Oh, break. Good idea, Brian. Time for a break, so let's take a 10-minute break. Any questions, anybody? And that's when the rapture is going to occur. Okay. Sorry you missed it. No, I'm only kidding. You can get off the floor now. I'm only kidding. Oh, bless the Lord. Verse 30. And on that day the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day 8. Again, there's 18 parts. And on that day the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east and rises in the third portal for 31 mornings, and sets in the west of the heaven. On that day the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. Again, we're talking about the equinox. And the night is equal to the day, and years exactly as to the days 364. So Enoch knew there were 364 days to the year. So there has been a slight change. When did that occur? We don't know. We know we are 365 days plus a fraction. Where did the extra day in the fraction come from? Could it be as a result of Noah's flood? Yeah. Oh, with Joshua. Possibly. When the earth stood still for Joshua, did that change something? I don't know. We don't know. But Enoch says at 364, we know we are 365 plus a small percentage today. When did that happen? We don't know. Okay. All right. Where am I at? 33. And the length of the day and of the night, and the shortness of the day and of the night arise. Through the course of the sun, these distinctions are made. They are separated. Verse 34. So it comes that the course becomes daily longer, and the course nightly shorter. And this is the law and the course of the sun, and his return as often as he returns 60 times and rises, the great luminary, which is named the sun forever and ever. So, one thing we can glean from that statement right there is the sun is never going away. Yeah, the sun is not going away. The sun will be here even during the millennial reign. The sun will be here. However, the new Jerusalem will shine like the sun.
What are the dark spots on the sun?
The fool people, I guess, think it's going to get ready to go out. I don't know.
They don't know what the future is.
He asked, what are the dark spots on the sun? We don't know. There could be some type of regeneration going on. It could be anything that's going on. Just because there's a dark spot does not mean it ain't hot.
Maybe the angels didn't do their job.
Well, it could be some type of energy or force that keeps the sun going. It's not a dark spot per se. It's the light wave it emits looks like it's dark. But it could be an extremely hot spot on the sun. Just because it's dark doesn't mean it isn't super hot. Amen? All right. All right, where am I at? 36. And that which thus rises is a great luminary, so it is named according to its appearance, according as the Lord commanded. This is why Daniel 12 says, the righteous who bring many to the kingdom will shine like the luminaries. So the righteous will shine like the sun. This is not, you know, a wives' tale or whatever. The righteous that lead many to the Lord will shine as the luminaries. But you have the power to turn the light on and off. And we've talked about this many times. When the New Jerusalem comes down and you're dwelling in the New Jerusalem, the light of the New Jerusalem will shine down upon the earth, particularly along the land of Israel. And that's why it says in Zechariah chapter 14, that Jerusalem needs no light. Why is that? Because the New Jerusalem hovers right above it and provides light. And so, for us to shine like the luminaries is an amazing thing. So when Yeshua said, "You are the light of the world," maybe we better take that literally and not just symbolically. We are the light of the world. Verse 37, as he rises, so he sets and decreases not, and rests not, but runs day and night, and his light is sevenfold brighter than that of the moon. But as regards size, they are both equal. This is why you have eclipse. Far as position on the earth, they are the same size. Truthfully, we know the sun's a lot bigger than the moon. But from Enoch's perspective, they're the same size. Stop and think about that a moment. God's plan here. In order for there to be signs in the sun and the moon upon the earth, he made it so that the moon and the sun appear to be the same size so you can have eclipses. What are the odds of that? You know, that it was all by chance. We could have had a really big moon or even a bigger sun or whatever, and you never would have had an eclipse. But it was made for signs and wonders. You know, the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Anybody here ever see that movie? A couple of people have. You know, it's a funny show. The guy gets transported to King Arthur's court in the Middle Ages. And he's showing them all kinds of wonders, you know, matches and all this kind of stuff, you know. Oh, well, we want a fire. Here you go. Oh, witch, you know. So they were going to burn him at the stake. he was doing things that we take for granted today. And so he thought it was all over. And he said, well, what day is this? Well, this is such and such a year of our Lord. And him being a scientist goes, there's going to be a major eclipse today. So he stands there as they got all the wood around him. There's the torches are getting ready to light him and burn him up. He goes, stop or I'll blot out the sun. What? You can't do that. Burn him, you can't do that. Yes, I will. Blot out. By the time the moon goes across the sun, it was a total eclipse. And the people going, what do we do? What do you do? Get on your knees and ask for forgiveness, and I'll bring the sun back. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And then the moon moves away, the sun starts coming back. Cute little show. But the people back then had no idea, you know, what the eclipse was. And truth be known, they probably did. They probably had already figured it out by then. But it made it for a good show anyway. What's that?
They had Magellan.
They did have Magellan, yes. All right. 73, verse 1. And after this law, I saw another law dealing with a smaller luminary, which is named the moon. And her circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind. There we go. It's moved by the wind again. Enoch just assumed the wind's blowing it around, but maybe that's just a different concept. We don't know why he's saying that. And light is given to her in definite measure. And her rising and setting changes every month, and her days are like the days of the sun. When her light is in uniform full, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun. And thus she rises. And her first phase in the east comes forth on the 13th morning, and on that day she becomes visible. All right, 13th morning. 13th morning of what? You know, what are we talking about? 13th morning. That on that day she becomes visible and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. And the one half of her goes forth by a seventh part, and her whole circumference is empty, without life, with the exception of 1/7 part of it, and the 14th part of her light. 6, and when she receives 1/7 part of the half of her light amounts to 1/7 part and the half thereof. And she sets with the sun. When the sun rises, the moon rises with him, and receives half of 1 part of light. And in that night, in the beginning of her morning, in the commencement of the lunar day, the moon sets with the sun, and is invisible, that the night with the 14th parts and the half of 1 of them, and she rises on that day with exactly a 7th part, and comes forth and recedes from the rising of the sun, and the remaining days she becomes bright in the remaining 13 parts. Whew! So we're talking about the course of the moon, saying the winds drive her, and she rises with the sun and sets with the sun. Does everybody know that? The moon rises and sets the same way the sun does. You stop thinking about it, it has to be. You know, if the world is turning like this, and the moon and the sun is moving across the sky because the world's turning, then everything has a rise and set together, including the constellations. It all goes. So if the sun sets in the west, the moon sets where? The west. If the sun rises in the east, the moon rises where? In the east. All right, no excuse to get lost anymore, right? Use the sun and moon to tell where you're at. All right, so that's true. That's the way it works. And so, but the moon travels at a different speed than the sun, because the moon has to complete its course around the earth in order to get a full moon and a new moon and all that kind of stuff. It travels at a separate speed, but it still rises in the east and sets in the west. That's the way the moon works. The lunar year. And I saw another course, a law for her, and how according to that law she performs her monthly revolutions. And all these Uriel, the holy angel, who is the leader of them all, showed to me, and their positions, and I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me, and I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their light, till 15 days were accomplished. In the single 7th part, she accomplished all her light in the east, and the single 7th part accomplished all her darkness in the west. And in certain months she alters her setting, and certain months she pursues her own particular course. In 2 months the moon sets with the sun in those 2 middle portals, 3rd and the 4th. For she goes forth for 7 days, and turns about, and returns again through the portal which the sun rises, and accomplishes all her light. And she recedes from the sun, and in the 8th days enters the 6th portal from which the sun goes forth. And when the sun goes forth from the 4th portal, she goes forth 7 days until she goes forth from the 5th, and turns back again in 7 days unto the 4th portal, and accomplishes all her light. Then she recedes and enters into the 1st portal in 8 days. And she returns again in 7 days unto the 4th portal, which the sun goes forth. Thus I saw their position, how the moon rose and the sun set in those days. And if 5 years are added, the sun has an overplus of 30 days. And all the days which accrue to it for one of those 5 years, when they are full, amount to 364 days. Verse 11. And the overplus of the sun and the stars amount to 6 days. In 5 years, 6 days, every year comes to 30 days. And the moon falls behind the sun and the stars to number 30 days. It's talking about the orbits being at different speeds. And the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day unto eternity. God set the sun and the stars to determine the seasons, and they do not alter their course. The Lord knows exactly when he is going to bring judgment on the earth. The Lord knows exactly when the millennial period is going to start. And he knows exactly when the millennial period is going to end. And all this is determined the way he put the stars in order. The problem is we don't have enough knowledge to figure that out. And I certainly don't want to figure that out. I don't want to know. How can you live knowing that? Yeah, you're going to end up in this insane asylum before it ever got here, you know. You don't want to know those things. 12, and the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance nor delay their position by a single day unto eternity. The sun will always be here. Always. But complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. And in 3 years there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years 1,820 days, so that in 8 years there are 2,912 days. So it's kind of interesting, these years and these days. Somebody with a lot more intelligent than me can probably actually retrospective take these dates when they were first set by Enoch and maybe determine when 6,000 years come to an end. If you could figure that out, you probably know when the millennial reign is going to start. Interesting, right? Because the millennial reign is the major Sabbath, the great Sabbath, the millennial reign. So if you know from the time that all this stuff began and you count out 6,000 years, you could probably figure out exactly when the millennial period is going to start. But I'm not too sure we have the intelligence to figure that out. Probably thank God. For the moon alone, the days amount in 3 years to 1,062 days, and in 5 years she falls 50 days behind. So the moon is slow. Compared to the sun, the moon is slow. To the sum of 1,770, there is to be added 1,062 days. And in 5 years, there are 1,770 days, so that the moon, the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days. 16, for in 8 years she falls behind to the amount of 80 days. And all the days she falls behind in 8 years are 80 days. And the year is accurately completed in conformity with their world stations and the stations of the sun, which rise from the portals through which the sun rises and sets 30 days. Verse 1, and the leaders of the heads of the thousands who are placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the 4 intercalary days being inseparable from their office. According to the reckoning of the year, these render service on 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them men go wrong therein, for those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of heaven, and one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth portal, and the exactness of the year is accomplished, though it separates 364 stations. For the signs and the times of the years and the day of the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory has set forever over all the luminaries of the heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of heaven and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the ministering creatures which have made the revolution, and all the chariots of heaven. In like manner, 12 doors Uriel showed me, open in the circumference of the sun's chariot in heaven, through which the rays of the sun break forth, and from them is warmth diffused over the earth, and they are opened at their appointed seasons. And for the winds and the spirit of the dew, when they are open, standing in the heavens at the end, as for the 12 portals in heaven at the ends of the earth, out of which goes forth the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the works of heaven in the east and in the west. There are many windows open to the left and right of them. One window at its appointed season produces warmth, corresponding as these do to those doors from which the stars come forth, according as he commanded them, and wherein they had set corresponding to their number. And I saw chariots in the heaven running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars and never set. And one is larger than all the rest, in that it is to make its course through the entire world. Wow. All right, we're going to stop right there. Somebody say something?
Homework?
Oh, homework. Okay. No Enoch next week. Thank you, Jim. No Enoch next week. So all of you online understand, no Enoch next week. I will be in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem during that time. And so I won't be here, but we'll pick it up the week after. I'll be gone a week in Tel Aviv. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about that. I'll be speaking to pastors from 16 different nations. And most of them Far East nations. So this ought to be quite an event. Then they're taking Nita and I on tour with them. So we'll spend a week touring around Israel, and I asked them if they had a tour guide. They said no, so I know who they're going to be expecting to talk a lot. So I will probably be helping with the tour, and they're going to want to hear from me, because when I wrote my short expose of my book and sent it to them, they sent it out to all the pastors, and they're really interested in hearing me talk about this stuff. So it's amazing what God does. You know, I didn't plan on this. I didn't know this was all going to happen, and it was like, okay. I've said many times, God opens a door for you. If you don't walk through it, he'll open it for somebody else. So walk through the doors the Lord opens for you, and he'll keep opening doors and keep opening doors. So apparently that's what he's trying to do with me right now. So, and you know me, I love it. I'm a teacher at heart, and I love this stuff. And so having a chance to talk to all these pastors from 16 different nations, and I'm told they all speak English, even from China and Thailand and South Korea and India. Yeah, they all speak English. So that's amazing in itself.
Are you going to talk then about the end times?
I have to speak twice. And this is very interesting, because when I sent all that stuff in, they sent me a schedule. I opened the conference and I closed the conference. Except for the conference leader who does all the announcements and introductions, all that. I'm the first to speak and the last to speak. And I'm thinking, I didn't ask for this, Lord, but that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. So I'll talk about Israel's future on the first message, and I'll talk about how to witness to Jewish people on the second one. So these people all want to know how to bring Jews into the kingdom. That's pretty cool. And if you don't know South Koreans, you know, almost 35% of South Korean is born again. They are on fire, these South Koreans. So you get them fired up with the right knowledge and understanding, they're going to make a difference in the world.
So is it Korea that has 1 million people church, or is that China? I forgot.
Well, China has a lot of people that go to church. The underground church in China is huge.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard it may be as high as 50 million in China. But China's clamping down again.
Yeah.
So the church is going deeper and deeper again into hiding.
They got some freedom, and now they're losing it again.
Yeah, they're moving against it again. All right, let's see where we're going to stop here, folks. All right.
Remember to pray for the persecuted church.
Yeah.
So March the 20th, we're going to take up in page 163 to where?
To 174. Yeah, 163 to 174.
All right, you're off.
All right, I'm off.